We are with Creating Worlds with Aaron Archer.
Hey.
He will be doing a fine presentation, and he's hoping for a Q&A that is focused on said presentation.
We can talk about a few things, but I talk often about the toys and the toy products and that aspect. I thought today it'd be interesting to, I will give long-form answers to questions about the creation and decision-making about movies, video games, character use, how we decided to do the aligned continuity, if that's what you're into, why the 13. But I think I would like to kind of expand on how we make those decisions that kind of drive those toys that we all love. And then I can give you my process throughout that kind of those questions. So does anyone have any questions about how we did any of that stuff? I will also take some toy questions, but I think that happens a lot at cons, and this might be an interesting opportunity to expand on the other side of it. That was it. That was it.
All right, mic is on. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Hey, Aaron, I've got just a question. As we know, there was the big thing at Hasbro, the whole initiative in order to bring all the continuities together for the Transformers Prime universe.
Yep. What
with the so-called Binder Revelation culminating in the Covenant of Primus release.
Yep.
I was wondering, I guess, if there was anything you could tell us just about the process involved in
Yeah.
going through all that and stuff.
Well, that was a big part of what we did in the last 6 years, really. It went back quite a ways. We felt the need to clarify some, it started with a kind of, there's things we don't know. Who are all the 13? What's the real story of Unicron and Primus? How did they really get to Earth? Why are they fighting an endless war? Why do they really dislike each other? So that was all bubbling up. At the same time, Activision started talking about, let's do this kind of pre-G1 game, and we were definitely into that, and that gave us a chance to flesh out what happened before Episode 1 of the G1 series in a way. And from there, we just kept snowballing with that. The two video games needed to match up. There was a novel deal signed up, and we're like, well, let's expand there. Prime was getting developed. They needed a vision of Cybertron, of the ship, and we had enough bank of work that we kind of could say, let's use these assets. The actual Cybertron in the Prime show is the build Activision made of Cybertron.
Huh.
So that was kind of cool, being able to take publishing, video game, and then animation, ultimately making toys as well, and try to string those things together. Transformers never really had that. Star Wars has it, Batman can have it a little bit, but Transformers had kind of a very fractured start, stop, kind of looks like, not quite, different, but same, kind of attitude. We felt like we wanted to clean that up. And the hope was that we would clean it up and go forward. I think when you make a book like that, it looks like a guide. And innovation looks like it's hard to get innovation out of a guide. So it's a really cool book that became the Covenant of Primus a bit, but it's not, the whole book isn't out there. So there's still a lot of stuff that never got developed. But that was what was happening at that time. Okay. And the aligned continuity, I don't even know if it'll last. I don't know what the next cartoon, I believe, is drafting off where Prime is. So I don't know where that'll end up. But I'm happy to have been part of at least trying to rectify the 13. Why is Optimus and Megatron at the core have a conflict? Rather than you're red, I'm purple. Those are the things we were trying to do at the time.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey. So thanks for talking to us again last night. It was really cool.
All access.
Yeah, it was cool. So my question is kind of about when selecting all the characters for a show or for like the spread. Well, I guess for the spread in the toy line, do you guys keep all that in mind together, and like you try to pick different characters that'll have different posing personalities. Like, how do you choose the characters to be, for the show and stuff?
It ebbs and flows. I mean, we had characters in Armada in the Cybertron series that kind of were there for a little bit, and then they haven't been seen again. The decision usually was around maybe who haven't we done in a while, who's important to the brand. So kind of you see that Bumblebee is in everything now. Optimus is everywhere, obviously. But Bulkhead came out of animated, and it's like, well, we like this guy. Let's keep him. We need a new RC, but we don't really want to make her pink. How can this be done? Well, let's make her Batman. Okay, that's cool. So you get that, through those decisions, you get that prototypical superhero lineup where you got the tough leader guy, the little punky guy, the big dude, and every line finds its zone. It's often, it looks like it's about 50-50 new, 50 old when we ultimately made those teams. But it comes down to color, shapes of vehicles, where the focus of the show will be. All those things factor into how the team gets put together. And we all have our favorites, so we all try to get this guy in, or we haven't done this guy for a while. So those are how the teams get made.
Cool. Thanks.
Sure.
Hello.
Hey.
I'd like to talk about mini-cons.
All right.
I'd like to ask how they came about, why the decision was made to bring those into the brand, where they came from story-wise, how you saw them at first, where you hoped they would eventually go.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to quickly know which one of the mini-cons is your favorite.
Wow, okay. Mini-cons is an awesome point for me to start. That was my first project in my 13 years. So I got told by my boss and through the new president, who is now the Hasbro CEO, that he wanted a collectible line out of Transformers. They wanted to get back to vehicles. Beast Machines was perceived as a little too cerebral and kind of funky designs that they wanted to try to figure out, let's get back to cars and trucks and jets and that look like cars, trucks, and jets that people know. So the idea was, how do we get a collectible line with cars and stuff? And Takara presented Micromasters again, and then we played with that a little bit, and we figured out how to make them the trigger of the action. And once we kind of decided that they were going to be the popcorn that would come with everything and trigger everything, then the story started to unfold, and they became kind of really cool. I mean, it was a unique time and space where you got a lot of value out of an Armada purchase, featurally, the extra character cards. So it was fun early days. I named them mini-cons. We developed the logo, the M logo, the baseball field logo. And Takara was very interested in that. They loved the micro play, so it was a good, when we were starting this co-developing the products and the show, it just fit for everybody's needs. As far as my favorite one, I don't know. I have a few. I did all the first wave sets. Some are better than others, but I'm fond of all of them because it was my learning curve. The deco on those stink. The mold plan isn't very well laid out in most cases, and that's all me learning. So I'm happy that they are as popular as they are, but I look back and I go, man, I wish I knew more then. But my favorite one, I like the one that came with the Skywarp. We redid the Minicon, put new wings, I believe, on, and looked a little different. I like that guy. I'll be honest with all of you. After working on 3,000 individual robot toys, probably, I can't keep their names straight, particularly when each package comes with 2 named characters. So I apologize for not knowing the brand as well as you, but I had to rewrite a lot of the information to get to the next thing. But that guy I like a lot, and the planet that came with Unicron. Originally, we were going to call that Gobatron. and we cleared it. Hasbro at the time owned Gobatron, but we thought that was a little too much on the head, so we didn't really want to make an inside joke on a character like Unicron. But I like that guy also.
Cool, thanks a lot.
Sure.
Hi.
Hey.
Over the years, we've had a lot of different incarnations of the brand. Some of them have been more universe-driven, where you have the characters established within a certain setting, and then they go through what that setting establishes. Whereas other incarnations of the brand have been more character-driven and driven the story by the relationships between the characters. And I'm wondering how that is approached from a corporate level in terms of strategy and in terms of building a direction forward for the brand.
I think the easy answer there is Hasbro would try to partner with the best people that they could partner with at the time. That would, and that's often how then the flow of development would happen. Cartoon Network has a particular flow that was very engaging, partnering. Hasbro Studio had a different goal and set that they were needing to do to launch a network. So every show kind of takes on its own feel. If you look at the Armada, the Unicron trilogy, that's very toy focused. It's essentially a commercial for the features of the products. And that is when two toy companies make a show, that's what they look like. When professional animator people make a show independent of toys, they make Prime. So it's just a different point of view, and it's really who the development team is that does it. I'd like to say it was more tactical. We want this kind of writing or that kind of writing. It's a little more research than that. Like, we want to get into young rescue bots. We want to get into like a movie-like universe, Prime. It's not directed any much more than that until the scripts start coming in at the different points.
And as for yourself as a storyteller, what do you feel the strengths are of the Transformers brand with regards to those kind of different storytelling ideas?
Yeah, well, whether it's good or bad, I think there's a lot of pliability in the Transformers franchise. It's been so many things, but it has kept a center spine, and you can really, there's a big difference between RID and Prime, a big difference between Armada and Beast Wars, but it's all legitimately Transformers and feels like Transformers. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, I have 2 questions for you. Question number 1, I remember reading in The Vault, I don't remember who said it, but the amount of information they collected for Transformers to put in the book is more than enough to fill up Astro Train. So I was wondering just how much content hasn't been put, because every single character has a story, which I love about Transformers. Unlike Star Trek, they throw around red coats everywhere.
Yeah. Transformers is great. You can do a thing like Last Stand of the Wreckers that have no outwardly main characters, and it's still as cool and popular as the main title. What was the core of your question? I got off on that whole topic. Can you say that one more time?
Yes. How much more content?
Yeah.
Is
So
there?
the Vault book, we researched everything. I went to Takara with one of Michael Kelly, the lead publisher for Hasbro, to Tokyo, and we went in a room with Takara, and we looked at models and paintings and wood 2-up heads of Devastator, demolishers and stuff, videotapes that transformed just as cool as the micro cassettes, and we couldn't put everything in. It would have just been a treasury of cool art and photos. What also happened with that particular book, which is sad, that company that put that out also put out a Star Wars book like a year before. Oh. And it's awesome. It's huge and it's awesome. And,
I saw it.
And when the economy changed and the publishing industry, at least in the United States, changed considerably, that book got compromised somewhat, just from what can really be supported by people still buying books and at what price. And they had to make a decision to lower the price and take a lot out. It's still a great treasure trove of Transformers knowledge, but there would always be more if there could be. So it's unfortunate that that didn't come out.
The reason why I asked that question is because one time I tried to make a list of all the Transformers.
Yeah.
I gave up after like 2000.
I'll tell you, one of Hasbro's biggest things we always tried to do was how many Optimuses have there been? Like, okay, and then we'd get our list, we get Takara's list, we consult some fans and get their lists and realize, there's so many ways to count. Do you count exclusives? Do you count Takara items and Hasbro items? So we don't know the real number, even now. It was always one of those research projects that never found time, budget, to get done.
I see. Thank you very much. And my second question is, you have to create so much, even for just one universe.
Yeah.
I have a question, Missy. You have to create so much for even just one universe, and in Generation 1, for example, there were so many inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Some of them were obvious, some of them were less obvious. How do you guys manage to decrease the amount of inconsistencies?
Well, I don't know that we always do, or the animation partner always does, or a comic partner always does. Again, I'll talk to that malleability of the brand. I think all of us as fans know from time to time we kind of have to squint and go, that's I'm not going to call that guy that name because he should be this, or so you have to make those calls.
So it's mostly like directors and everything.
To
So it's mostly directors and producers who make these calls.
For which? For the films? Or?
Well, not just for the films, but what is for each episode. It's like, oh, this episode we're gonna do this, and then the next episode they're gonna completely forget that they did this yesterday.
Yeah, it just comes down to the management of the animation production. They should have people who are checking that, and I think also you're talking inconsistencies within the show. The shows were made kind of haphazardly. I think we all could admit we probably didn't know that we would be watching them and critically looking at them on the 200th viewing. So things that probably didn't even go noticed too much at times in the early days are now
Very obvious.
very obvious. Yeah, and the newer shows and the newer comics, you try, but when you put out as much volume of Transformers material that has
gets
come
really
out, it's very hard. Yeah, it is very hard.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Tiptoes.
Hello.
Thanks. Sorry. It kind of goes off of his question.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of it's the writers, just what works with the show or whatever the media is. But Megatron, for the last couple of series, seems to be like he's still awful, but it's like he's slowly getting a little more sympathetic, like where he came from and what happened to him. Is that a conscious decision, or is that just the writers?
I don't think it's a conscious decision by Hasbro, but I do think the writers are trying to find new avenues to tell Megatron stories. And a big part of the aligned universe trying to understand why Megatron and Optimus initially were friends, and Optimus learned how to fight from Megatron, and then they had their rift, and that rift is at the core of the thing.
Yeah, most of it seemed to have gotten explained in the last question. I was just wondering about that because he's gotten more sympathetic. He's still
and I
awful,
think
but-
so. I think it has shifted in the last 20, 25 years into villains are really cool, and sometimes they seem to be the main characters of the movie, and I think that's happening also on Transformers.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you.
I remember back in Beast Wars, Beast Machines Armada, there was just Optimus Primal, and then during and Energon. Then during Cybertron, you had 4 leader Prime, Megatron, and the 4 leader characters.
Yeah.
And now with the animated and the movie lines, there's not 4 leader characters, but there's 100 versions of Optimus Prime coming out.
Yeah.
Is that like a conscious marketing decision because people, leaders sell, so in a few years everybody will be a leader of themselves?
Are you talking price point when you say leader?
No, I
or-
mean like rank
Yeah.
within the show, because there was Nitro Convoy or Override,
Yeah.
was he Metroplex? What was his Japan name?
Something convoy.
Megalo Convoy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it comes down. I don't know if I can really answer it other than not unlike the attitude towards Megatron. It's how do you make some of these guys a little different? Is there characters like a Starscream who are beloved?
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to. You want to find a way to give him his due, maybe. So we did that in Cybertron. I don't know if there's a real good answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
My question comes from when you're coming up with character concepts and character designs. In the original G1 series, they really focused on real cars,
Yep.
Lamborghinis,
Yep.
Porsches, etc. Is it from a marketing perspective, or is it from just an artistic perspective that the vehicle, I guess the vehicle transformations that you guys use or come up with, they're not as, I guess, realistic. Because I grew up with those cars, and I love Porsches, I love Lamborghinis, I love looking at those type of cars. So when you guys are designing your characters, are you basing it on futuristic, possible things, or do you guys actually draw your own Lamborghinis or your own versions of?
Yeah. Well, what was great about G1 is licensing really wasn't a thing. Takara did not pay any money for Jeeps, Lamborghinis, Porsches, any of it. So that is not the reality, mid 90s on. And so the designs team were, naturally then forced to create from scratch. Unless we entered into deals, and that's how you get alternators, and then also the movie line are licensed vehicles in large part. But when you're making a line like Armada, we can have the kind of esoteric conversation. Do you want a minicon and 5 more ops, or do you want it to be a real Lamborghini? That's kind of those decisions that get made, because that same amount of money would go to Lamborghini, and those parts would just be gone. And it's a lot of extra work, individual deals. Alternators, which was a bigger scaled car line for maybe people don't know, each car was an individual deal with an individual rate of payment to the license holder, a different level of licensing authority. So some people, we had to fly to them and get the car approved. Other people just check the box. Some people were enthusiastic about having their car turned into a transformer. Some people, like Porsche at the time and Lamborghini and stuff, were not. Partially because of those early days eating their lunch, for free. So we called, I remember us calling, we had a guy from Germany that worked with us, and we called Volkswagen. We wanted to do Bumblebee. That was the first alternator we actually designed. Second. But we were told not to call back. So that obviously has shifted. They're more eager now, but those are the fights and issues that you run into. And then when you're putting gimmicks and features and different combinations together, it's really about the toy. And then kids do not have a heightened sense of vehicle design in most cases, so you don't need to make them literal. We did try to hire good designers and good outside freelancers to help us make sure the cars looked cool, and I'd say our batting average is better than it's not. So that's kind of the decision about how real cars have been made or aren't made now.
Oh, that's fantastic. My second question was, I'm very happy that you guys included a lot more female characters in the stories, because I think it was missing that female presence for
Yeah.
the longest time in
Yeah.
the show, because it was always geared towards boys, boys, boys. And I think with the character concepts that you're coming up with for more female characters, what, I guess, do you guys have because there's not enough backstory as to
Yeah.
what develops between what's a guy robot and what's
Yeah.
a girl robot.
Well, it
So-
came down to the preconceived notion that boys don't want to buy women action figures. You know, they want the cool lead hero, and you know, the classic traditional thing was the female was often a damsel in distress, or you know, not always part of the action. That has certainly changed in the last 5 years to almost the opposite. I mean, if you look at the popularity of Wingblade and
Yep.
Chromia and some of these things, and you know, Sarah's art, and she's a female. I mean, all of it is changing. Pony being Pony. You know, we're all exposed to so many things that we're allowed to like what we like now, and that allows. That's changing culture. So kids now aren't as afraid to maybe buy a female toy, and more fortunately, more females are interested in buying toys. So it's something that's changed. I sat on plenty of these daises and said, well, it's a boys' toys thing, and towed the company line and said, you know, they don't sell, and maybe we'll do an exclusive RC somewhere kind of thing. You know, that's no longer the case or how it should be approached. I think that's all changing now. I can't speak to how they're developing female characters or how many female characters they may be doing now, but you can see that change is happening with the popularity and interest in what's going to happen with Wonder Woman in the movie, and Orphan Black, and you know, there's all this stuff. There's a renewed female presence, and it's a good thing for fandom, all across the board,
Thank you.
especially when it's treated positively.
All right, just another question. This is with regards to the actual use of the word transform, actually. If you've noticed, I've noticed a trend in the last, there's a point a few years ago where all of a sudden it started dropping out of being used anywhere in shows. Like animated, it was used a lot, and beyond that, I think even in the IDW comics, it tends to be stuff like change form or convert, and those sorts of terminologies. I've assumed that this is a legally related thing in order to try and protect the trademark, but
It is.
yeah, I'm very curious.
Purely.
What was it exactly that brought on the change?
Well,
When did someone first think of it and
yeah,
notice?
Transformers is a brand name that is trademarked and copywritten. It is unfortunately also a word to convert, to transform. You know, so every time you use the term transform, it is diluting Transformers, and at a certain point, your Hasbro's shouldn't misuse its own trademarks, because you ultimately could lose that trademark. If you don't value it, then why do you hold anyone else from using it? So Hasbro traditionally tries to avoid the term, and it's the United States patent and trademark stuff.
Because I mean, yeah, like
Some of the shows use it from time to time, and it's not supposed to be there, but it ends up there.
like it's used a lot in G1 and Beast Wars and animated, even
Yeah,
in earlier
all
IDW
that-
books.
Yeah, the earlier ones, I don't think it was as big an issue legally. I think in the modern world where you want to own your brand everywhere, you know, Paramount wants Hasbro to own it. You know, all our partners want us to own it. You know, Hasbro doesn't need to get into a legal dispute about anything. So that's how it goes down.
All right.
So enjoy convert.
Or change form.
Yeah. We try to avoid morph. I was always against morph. They don't morph.
Well, thank you for that one.
And I should say, when I talk about me individually, like I or we, you know, it's often a team. You know, I was privileged and fortunate to lead that team, but you know, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that I wrote everything, picked every color, named every guy. It's like that old commercial. I didn't make all the toys you love, but I did something on all the toys you love. So I just want to be clear about that. I don't want to be unfair to my brothers and sisters at Hasbro and Takara.
Well, I'd like to ask you about the villains of the franchise.
Sure.
I've noticed that recently through Prime, the Movieverse, even prior to that, all the way back to RID, we had villains with generally vastly simpler motivations. They were more aggressive, more brutal,
Yeah.
less cerebral, less likable in many ways. Where do you see the villains of the franchise going from here on forward? Are we going to get scheming masterminds that maybe we actually like again?
Yeah.
And who was your favorite villain in the franchise?
Yeah, I think Transformers suffers at times, I'm going to give a long answer here, from too much too often. You know, there's often the need to reinvent fast or have no dormant periods, and that makes it tough. It makes it tough to get excited about the villain stories over and over, because they do end up being kind of one note at times. We would try to bring in different characters. You know, the main guys still latch on though, and I don't know what the future holds. I would love to see kind of just a natural downsizing of the vehicles that, you know, I started in 2000. So it's been a long time. We've interspersed beasts and different animals and bugs and things throughout all the series now. But like I'm excited about a total inversion again, to go back to a new story about animals, maybe, to be able to bring in new villains and a new approach, and you know, maybe not even have Bumblebee there or different things like that. You know, but those are points of view from, humbly, my vision, not always the corporate need or desire. So my future would be an inversion into a whole new area, so that there'd be a whole new idea of what to look at, play, read, watch, because it's time. I mean, I honestly, I did very well over the years at Hasbro, and I appreciate every purchase everybody makes, but I can't, when I talk to you guys at times and your dedication is such that you've bought 70 Bumblebees, that was never the intent, and I want to give you more. So that's the thought process that I have. I want more variety or a dramatic change. Hope I answered your question.
Yep. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a little short. I was just wondering, who's your favorite character that you've created, like an original character that you've created?
Yeah, I have a couple. I was just yesterday talking about this. I love Armada Megatron because it was one of the, I think it represents my look, my style best on a mechanical thing. I draw very organically. But anyway, I like that guy. I like his antlers and all his stuff. I really shouldn't, I really can't pass up 20th Anniversary Optimus, though. Knowing what that set off for the franchise, masterpiece, third-party stuff, you know, an idea that you could do a collector thing within Hasbro. I've told this story at other cons where I came in, Brian Goldner, who was eager to get Transformers up and running because he saw the vision for movies and studios and things through that brand. I brought in the board of the 84 Optimus, scaled up, and I just said, you know, G1 but made big, you know, but metal. And he gave me, he didn't even let me present it. He gave me the price that we're allowed to use as our development budget, you know, on a product. You know, they all have a hard cost. The hard cost he gave me enabled me to do lights and VM and rubber tires and springs and glass and all that stuff. And knowing what it launched, I have to go with that. That probably is the one I'll be most proud of, I guess.
Very cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello. I have a question. Is it we're going back to Bumblebee here. Is it a thing that is it like a sales choice because he's been so prominent for the kids that we get like 3 Bumblebees in a wave of deluxes compared to a character that everyone likes, like compared to like Ironhide that hasn't had a good toy in a while.
Yeah, the assortment ratios are kind of, they're tricky for the fans because they're metriced for the kid audience. So there's going to be more turns on a Bumblebee for a kid often, theoretically, than there will be for a Waspinator or, Tank Guy. So the fans want Tank Guy because we haven't made Tank Guy since 1986. But the kids don't know that, so it gets ratioed lower, and it gets bought out, and then all those Bumblebees are there. The kids buy them, but they don't buy them as fast as the collectors come into the store and want to see the other ones there. So it's a tough algorithm that I find has always been it unfairly burdens the fan who wants the cool villain, the characters they want, the guy that's the one in the case back. And that's kind of how it goes. So you will always see more Bumblebees, Optimuses, Starscreams, and sometimes Megatron, depending on the assortment, than any other character.
Well,
and Swerve.
That leads into the next question, which is, how do the higher-ups feel about certain Transformers being left on shelves a lot longer, and has that like affected any of their judgment on, hey, we should probably do less of this one character in an allotment? So
yeah, there's so many ways that different situations have gone down. A retailer might really want a lot of Bumblebees, so they order extra. That happens. It can happen any number of ways. The higher ups only care that it gets on the shelf and leaves the shelf, and when it doesn't leave the shelf, that's when they are going to care more. So Bumblebee definitely became an issue, and I know Hasbro addressed it or start putting motion to address it. Although Bumblebee continues to be part of the franchise, so you're going to continue to have that ratio kind of present itself. So I don't know how that gets fixed.
All right, thank you.
Just to add, I wish they had a way for you guys to be able to get that one character a heck of a lot easier than the wall of Bumblebee. Yeah.
This mic is really tall, or I'm just very short. For example, in the Prime series, you had the Orion Pax trilogy where Optimus wore the Decepticon symbol for a couple episodes. And I remember hearing in the commentary from the Season 2 DVD that was a really big risk and that they wanted to have be a whole season of that, but they couldn't because that was such a big difference and something that they didn't want to
I don't know if this is changing, but kids often are very literal. And, if you, it's tough, I'm going to say this, but, you want Superman to be the ideal. And that's why people didn't dig on how that Superman movie ended. You want him to be heroic and something. So the worry is kids are going to think Optimus is now bad or be confused at all about, is he good or is he bad? I don't really know. I'm not really interested. So it comes down to trying not to confuse kids was probably the worry. So a little limited use might give a good story flavor, but a full season of that would have been probably a difficult thing for Hasbro to really want to get behind. Yeah.
All right, and in extension to that you can talk about and that you know of or were part of, were there any other risks that some people really wanted to see happen, but because of public review, you just couldn't let go through?
No, most of the things that didn't go through, they just weren't working, or like Bot Shots had a whole racetrack kind of play to it, and it just didn't work very well. But we didn't have too many things that didn't go that way.
Thank you.
In terms of licensed goods, we've seen a lot of stuff from the 80s. There was Transformers bed sheets, there was Transformers cups, there was Transformers toothbrushes and soap and party hats and candles and everything. And then for a while there kind of wasn't, and now we're seeing that again, with the movies and with more recent incarnations of the brand. Again, there's Transformers everything. But we're also seeing sort of a niche being carved out for retro being popular, especially in terms of adult goods, like T-shirts and posters and such.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what level of sort of oversight and involvement and development Hasbro takes in that, or if they just say, we have a licensor that wants to license our goods, here's what you have access to.
It comes down to what partners need what, who are their target demographics, what do those demographics want. So whether it's a T-shirt or a video game, we ebb and flow with that. So Hasbro has a G1 style guide along with a movie style guide. So if you're a franchise holder of the license of G1, you can do G1 stuff, but that doesn't mean you do movie stuff. So different people buy into different deals. You can't deny G1. I mean, there's a huge fan base for that. As far as all the other licensed goods, I always tell people, or told people that, you really weren't a brand until you had a piñata of your main character. That's when I knew Transformers had arrived post movie 1, that we had a piñata and a cake pan. And that's when you're on a big brand. When they sell custom icing to go along with that cake pan. They did. You're like, wow. Yeah. So that just means the brand's successful. It brings in a lot of revenue for a lot of different types of companies, and depending on what they need, we ebbed and flowed. Just like we would work with the video game guys. Okay, you want to do G1 style? Let's dig into that.
So it is an active collaboration in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Some things like the T-shirts, it's just a straight deal.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the style guide. You have the rights to do X number of shirts. Go to town, and it's not a lot of back and forth. It's approval, but it's pretty straightforward. The more content there is being developed, the more involved I was and other people would be. So it's all based on the level of content.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah. But Hasbro has a whole division of people who do check and sign off and make sure everybody's paying their bills and everything. Oh, awesome.
I'll try and keep this quick. It's a two-parter.
All right.
One, I've noticed that Takara will release toys that Hasbro won't. Greatest example would be the Voyager-sized breakdown mold from Transformers Prime.
Yeah.
Or their rebranding of the Beast Hunters as Go with their combiners.
Yep.
What leads to Hasbro deciding not to take advantage of that partnership to bring them to us?
Focus of intent. If Hasbro's into the one thing or the other, they may not want that or need that. Takara has the rights to make anything they want in their market, and they have different niche holidays, and they have different expectations of the size of that gift during that holiday. So some of that doesn't match with what Hasbro would want or the functionality Hasbro would want. It might not cost the same way. Takara, every item is a different price. They don't have deluxe
price points.
So they can add little things and do whatever they want.
So they can make breakdown a single figure rather than put them in a wave. Okay.
Yeah.
And as for the case breakdown thing, it was recently announced through that Hasbro is kind of working out a deal currently with Direct Comics here in Canada, or Diamond Comics in Canada, to let comic stores carry individual figures outside of packaging waves. So
And
we can order just tank guides
Yeah, I hope they figure that out. It's been since the collector thing has started post McFarlane. People have desired, how do I just direct get this stuff? And I hope they can figure it out.
So they're trying to work that negotiation out as of recent announcements.
All right.
Okay, so real quick, so the IDW comics, they're awesome. And one thing that always comes up in discussions of them is like, oh man, wouldn't it be awesome if we got like DC animated movie style ones? Is that, I'm just curious, does it ever come up in discussion? What what was said?
Yeah, they know their business. Different things work better in the comics industry. Like animated comics don't really do as well as the harder edge stuff, as an example. So it's really what IDW knows is needed in the market and wanted in the market. So we're not going to we wouldn't put anything on them that way, like let's do a.
Well, like to work with them to make like some kind of animated project that would be a direct sale kind of movie or so.
All those things kind of get talked about, but when you have the big movies and stuff, you don't need those distractions almost. You can't communicate all the things that are happening if you do too many.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.